Cool, hello and welcome everyone. So today we will be looking at the most commonly used Maya operations for modeling. We will be talking about things like bevel, booleans, combining and separating meshes. Another command we'll look at is fill hole and poke. Also mesh cleanup, which is really useful for when you're trying to find your nasty angons on the mesh. Edge split, poly extract, wedging, merging, making holes. We will take a look at the multicut tool and also at the target weld operation. So let's go into Maya. I have prepared a small scene for you, so it's not complicated. There's a couple of different things for different operations. And the first thing I want to do here, and you can follow along with me because you will have access to this file, or you can just watch me do it on the screen and maybe take notes so that you remember what each operation does. The first thing I want to do is to hide the meshes that I'm not working with at the moment. So the easiest way of doing this is going into your outliner, which you can find under Windows Outliner, or I have this special mode here in Maya, which lets me see the perspective window and the outliner on the side. It doesn't really matter, so I also have it on my shelf, which I recommend you doing as well. So put this on your shelf and you have instant access to it. As you remember, it contains or it holds all of the geometry that you have in your scene. And what I want to do is to hide whatever I'm not working with at the moment. And it's quite easy to do from the outliner. So what I can do is to press on the first item or click on the first item I want to be hidden and press on the last one on the list with the shift press. So it selects everything. And then if you press Ctrl H, it will hide everything. And so to unhide something, because we didn't delete anything, it's just hidden and you can see it's grayed out on the screen, we can do the same thing. So just click on the first item and then with Shift click on the last one and press Shift H. So Shift H to unhide and Control H to hide something. So we will be working with this cube, which I called Bevel. We can get rid of history and transforms because we don't really care about them at the moment. Don't forget that if you need to zoom in on your object or frame your selection, you can press F on your keyboard if it's a little bit too far away and hard to see. So Bevel will be sitting under Edit Mesh. So you can find it here, and you can set up different options if you wanted to. I usually don't use it from here, so I just use it straight from the shelf, the polygon shelf. So if we click on it, and you saw that we had the whole object selected, so we were in the object mode. It gives us this result, so we can control the amount of bevel with Control, clicking on the fraction word over here. So I'm pressing and holding Control just to get a smoother result when I'm doing this. Otherwise it would be too sudden of a change. You can also middle mouse drag on your screen, so instead of dragging over the word fraction, you can do it this way. So I'm just pressing and holding middle mouse button and dragging around. And so again, if you press Control and do the same thing, it will just give you a smoother result. So Bevel is good for when you need to add a little bit more geometry, just to make it look a little bit smoother. I don't use it that often, but it's good to know where to find it and how to use it. So you can change the amount of fraction, which will just give you different type of bevel, different smoothing. You can also change the amount of segments. So as you can see, the more you add, the smoother the surface looks. And we can also see, if we turn on our wireframe, that we're how much geometry we're adding. So at the moment it only goes to 12, but you can always override this number and put 30, for example. And you will see that we're getting really dense type of geometry, and we can uncheck our wireframe. But to be honest, it looks almost the same. So I wouldn't really recommend to go that high unless you're trying to achieve something specific. You can also always go back to this operation, so unless you have deleted your history, if you click on this cube and go into your channel box and inputs, you can click on this poly bevel 1, and you can change all of those things from here as well. So you can change the fraction and just be really specific about the numbers you're using. You can change a lot of different things in here, but what we're interested in is mostly just the fraction and the segment, so I can put it to something a little bit lower. So you can see that we're getting a pretty nice, smooth looking cube. And once you're happy with everything, you can go ahead and delete your history if you don't want to be working with this particular information again. So I can hide this object now, so Control H, and let's turn on our booleans. Shift H to unhide. So booleans are quite interesting to use and quite fun to use. In the previous versions of Maya, they were quite unstable, meaning that you would be getting a lot of crashes on your Maya. I haven't had this problem with Maya 2017 so far, although one thing I must notice is that usually it's better to work with objects that are low poly, so that do not have like a million polygons in them, and the lower the better. So what booleans allow us to do is to combine or extract elements. For example, I can make a hole using those two objects. So I can use this object as something that will create a hole in this one. Or I can unite them, so I can make them one mesh instead of having two separate meshes. And we can also tell Maya that we just want the intersection of those two objects. So let's take a look at all of those options. And I'm going to get rid of history and freeze transforms on both of those as well, because I don't really need that anymore. You could put the number of edges for this object down, so I'll show you how to do it again. If we click on the cylinder and go into the inputs, because I haven't deleted the history since I created the object, I still have that creation history here, so I can change the amount of subdivision axes I have to something like 8, for example. So you can find your Boolean operations under Mesh, Booleans, and we will take a look at the union first. So for the union, it doesn't matter in which particular order you're selecting those objects. So I can just select both of them. So press on the first one or click on the first one and then shift select the second one and go under Mesh, Booleans and click Union. So as you can see, it has combined two meshes together. And if we go into our face mode and get rid of this polygon, you will see that it got rid of all of the insides of the cylinder. So everything that was intersecting is gone now, and we have just one consistent object. So we can put back our face. But you will notice that the geometry it has created is not is not ideal really. So we have quite a bit of angons, at least 4, which we will have to fix eventually. And it's not going to be too big of a deal, and I'll show you right now how to do it. So first of all, I kind of want to try and get rid of those edges over here really quickly and just see if it actually is going to work or it will break the mesh, because I'm not entirely sure. So selecting all of those edges and go and shift right click delete edge. So seems to be fine. So what I want to do now is to grab one of the edges over here, and I want to create a new edge just in the middle so that it would split the polygon in half. So there is a really quick way of doing it, which I use quite a lot, because it creates this ideal separation, which is like 50% from the left and 50% from the right side, if you consider the length of this edge 100%. So you can click on the edge and go Control right click, and then to edge ring utilities, and then to edge ring and split. So it has created this beautiful edge sitting right in the middle of this polygonal face. It wouldn't go any further than that, just because this is an angon and Maya is not entirely sure how to separate it properly. So what we can do now, we just need to create the same sort of separation for all of the edges going around the object. And again, I'm just clicking on this edge and go on Control right click, edge ring utilities, to edge ring and split. So really quick. And once you've done that once, you can use your G repeat command to do the same for the rest of the edges. And what we can do from here is to use our multicut tool now to connect those elements together really quickly as well. So you can find it under your polygon shelf, or I believe it will be also under mesh tools and multicut. Go and select this, and we just need to make sure we're clicking on the vertices so it will highlight them for you. And once you have connected those two together, just press enter. And as you can see, Maya freaked out a little bit, which is not really a problem. As long as we're not creating any geometry on the inside, which I'm just gonna make sure that it's not, which it is. Cool, that's not really a problem. And as I mentioned before, sometimes Maya just doesn't know what's happening, so you kind of have to help it out a little bit. So what we can do from here is just to append this polygon, but I'm gonna try and see if we can connect any of the other elements together without more drama. Or if Maya is gonna keep complaining, and it seems like it is. So that's one of the drawbacks of using booleans. And again, still not a problem. So I think what I'm gonna do here is to get rid of those and just use my append. So it sort of negates, in a way, I guess, the effect that boolean did. We could have done the same type of thing, just using our insert edge loop tool, for example, and getting rid of the elements we don't want and combining elements together. So there are so many ways of doing this. And in some cases, you will notice that booleans work perfectly fine and you're not getting any weird results. But it's also good that we are running into those problems, because as soon as you start working in Maya, you will start running into them. And it's really frustrating, and sometimes it's quite scary when something like this happens and you're not entirely sure if, you did something wrong, if maybe you broke your Maya, or if there is a way to fix this. And there is always a way to fix pretty much everything in Maya. So it's just a good thing to know as many tools as you can, so that whenever something doesn't go your way, you can always just use another method of creating it. And so, as you can see now, the mesh is properly connected. We don't have any n-gons. Everything is actually a proper polygon, which is quite cool. So I've just created another set of objects to show you another Boolean operation. So we just have this cube and cylinder again. My cylinder, I think, has 12 faces going around. Still quite a small number, which is good. So we will be using our difference operation now. And for it to work properly, you need to select an object you want something to be extracted from first, and then you select something that will be the extractor, I guess, second. And we'll go under mesh, booleans, and difference. So as you can see, it's a complete opposite of what we got before that. Now we have a hole inside this cube, and we will be running into the same problem where we actually have to fix the n-gon. So you can try it out yourself this time. I'm actually curious about another thing, if it's going to work or not. We have this mesh and triangulate or quadrangulate option, which I think triangulate will work fine for this one. So it sort of did what I was going to do originally, maybe not in a very well-defined way, but it's a quick and dirty way of getting rid of some of the problems you have with the n-gons. So again, mesh, triangulate, it just connects them to the closest point it can find. And you can do the same for those guys. So it's not ideal, but at least you don't have that problem with the n-gons anymore, and everything is sort of connected. Kinda. I'm just looking in the smooth mode, so you can see that it's not a very nice shape, but it works. And you can always check if everything is properly connected by just dragging vertices around. And the last thing we will take a look at will be our intersection operation. So we have a cube here, another cylinder as well. And maybe this time, let's go and change it to 12 again. get rid of history and first transformations and go mesh booleans and intersection. So as you can see, this is what we are left with. And the only thing you would have to do with this one is to make sure that you connect those elements together properly. There is a really easy way of doing this. You can select the face and go under mesh and poke. So this usually works only for those types of scenarios where you have a cylinder and you have this huge n-gon and you just want to create edges going inside. So again, under edit mesh you can find this poke. Now your cylinder is properly fixed. So I usually don't use booleans that often because they're quite, as you can see, you can run into many problems with them, but sometimes they can be useful depending on what you're working on. So let's take a look at our combine and separate. Shift H to unhide them. So when you start modeling, your initial idea will be to try and connect all elements together. So for example, the same type of shape could be achieved by me grabbing this cylinder. I will just duplicate it really quickly. Creating a whole bunch of edges with my insert edge loop tool. And then you can extrude from here. And of course you will be getting a similar result. But sometimes the mesh becomes so complicated that it's almost impossible to try and implement those new polygonal faces into your model. That's when you can use the combine operation, which will just pretend that the mesh is one thing, although you would still be able to manipulate them separately later on if you wanted to. This is useful in the scenarios where you're trying to separate mesh according to different materials. So let's say this was made out of wood, for example, and those rings were made out of metal. So it doesn't make too much sense to try and connect them together in the proper way, you know, where we actually connect the edges and the vertices together. But instead of that, we could just select all of those and go under mesh and combine. And now Maya will consider it one mesh. It's a good way of working with things when you are importing things into a game engine as well. Instead of importing 5 objects, you can combine them in Maya into one and import them in that manner. But what we have here is we still have those polygonal faces inside of the object, so it hasn't actually done what Boolean was doing before. We can still manipulate those polygons separately. So if I click on this one and I go inside the object, you can still see it here. But if we go into our object mode, you will see that now Maya considers it to be one object. So from here, what you can do is to just rename it to whatever and make sure that you clean up your history and freeze transforms. But also, what happens if you want it to go back, right? If you've manipulated the object a little bit, changed a couple of things. Cool, maybe even added some sort of new geometry to your wooden part. So just extruding something. And then you've decided that actually, you know, I want to do something with those rings as well. Maybe it's quite hard to work for me in this manner, and I wanted to have them as separate objects. So you can always just click on your combined object and go under mesh and click on separate. And as you can see, everything is back to normal, so you can manipulate them as individual pieces. And the only thing that will happen is that Maya will reset the pivot point to the center of the origins, so to the middle of the grid for all of them. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't forget that you will probably have to recenter your pivot point, an operation which you can do under, or you can find under modify and then center pivot. So I've selected all of them. Cool, and now I can start manipulating those objects in any way I want, really. And after you've done that, you can just select everything and combine them back together. Cool. So now we can move on to our fill hole and poke. So we've done poking already, but we haven't done the fill hole operation. So this is just a cylinder which is missing its top part. We can go under mesh, fill hole, so it will create this huge ugly n-gon for us. And from here we can go and poke it. And everything is fixed. So the next one on the list is our mesh cleanup operation. I'll just unhide this. So as you can see here, this cube, although it looks completely fine, it actually has an n-gon, so this whole area here, just because we have so many floating vertices, this is not ideal to have. So what we can do from here is to select this cube as a whole and go under mesh and cleanup. And I will be using select matching polygons and check faces with more than 4 sides on. And from here we can hit apply, and it will highlight the problematic areas for us. So it will highlight the polygons that are considered n-gons. You can use the cleanup matching polygons version as well, so let's just take a look at what it's going to do. So you will see that Maya will try and get rid of those n-gons by connecting them to the nearest point it can find. So it could have gone the other way around, right? It could have just created those edges and connected them to this particular vertex. So the reason why I usually don't use the cleanup matching polygons operation is because I don't have any control over what Maya is doing. I can't tell it to, instead of using triangles, instead of creating a whole bunch of them, I could actually just create more edge loops going around the object and then connect them with those points. Or I could have selected all of them and I could have just gotten rid of them, right? So there are so many things I could have done, but instead of that I'm using this particular operation enforced on me by Maya. This is why I usually use select matching polygons, just to see if I have any problems in my model, and from there I fix them manually. Cool, so that's handy. It's something that I recommend you to do every time you submit your models, or every time you've finished a piece and you think that you're done with it, just make sure that you go and take a look at your cleanup options and see if you have any n-gons in your model. So let's take a look. The next one is edge split and poly extract. Okay, that's a cool one. And again, we're just using a simple cylinder over here. So I will be using my edge split again, which I've showed you already. So Control, right click, go edge ring utilities to edge ring and split. So it creates this perfect split right in the middle of the edge selected. We also have a lot of control over it as well. If we go into our channel box and under inputs, if you change a split type to multi, meaning multiple, and you can start adding more divisions. So you can say like 5, for example. It doesn't really matter too much. So it just depends on what you're actually trying to achieve. I'm going to switch it back to being relative and divisions 1. So what I want to do is I want to create 2 objects out of this one. So for this, we can use the poly extract command. What I will have to do is to select the polygons that I want to be extracted from the model. And we'll go under Edit Mesh and Extract. So as soon as you do this, it gives you this gizmo. I never usually use it, so what I do is I press Shift-P to unparent. We will be talking about parenting and unparenting later on. If we don't do it straight away, it means that the mesh will still be connected to its parent in a way. So just make sure that as soon as you've done this operation, you press Shift P, and you can see that, okay, now we have two separate meshes over here. And then by default, Maya goes straight into the polygonal face mode if you wanted to select the object. So to avoid that, if it starts getting really annoying, I usually, after pressing Shift P, I go and select object mode. So now we have two separate objects. We can manipulate them separately. If we wanted, we could go and select the edge and fill hole or whatever. Or if for some reason we wanted to connect them back together, we could even do that. We could use something that is called bridge, which I think was not on the list of the things that I was going to look at today. So let's try and see how that works. Just get rid of history, freeze transforms. As far as I remember, for the bridge to work, all that it's going to be doing is going to be connecting the edges together. So I will have to select the edge over here and the edge over here, and it will try and connect them properly. We will have to go under Mesh Combine to combine those two together. And select this edge over here, Shift select and double click on this one over here. And we should be able to find our bridge under Edit Mesh. Just click on it and see what happens. So it connected it perfectly fine, except for the fact that it created way too much geometry. So let's see if we can actually not create that much. If we can say, yep. So for the divisions, if we set it to 0, it will not be creating any additional edges, but it has also connected our geometry. So this is really cool, and the only thing you will probably have to do is to make sure that you smooth those normals again. So we'll just kind of select all of those, and I will press spacebar to get this menu going, and go on the Mesh Display and Soften Edge. All those menus you can find at the top as well. Go into the object mode, and here you go, fixed cylinder. You can even go ahead and get rid of the edges you don't need anymore, so if you wanted to get rid of those, you can double click, then with Shift to be able to select something else, double click on this one again, and go Shift right click and delete edge to make sure that you're not getting any floating vertices. So now we'll take a look at the wedge operation, which sort of allows us to create a nice little arc going between two elements selected. So it works with multiple components. We will have to have a face selected and an edge. So the edge will be kind of like the pivot point of the arc. But I'll show you how to do it really quickly. In the previous versions of Maya, you used to be able to select components of different types. At the moment, I think it doesn't work that well anymore, so we will have to use something that we haven't touched before, which is our modeling toolkit, and you can find it on the right side, just under your channel box. So what we need to do, we need to select this face and one of the edges, which will become a pivot point. So we'll go into my face mode first, and I will select this face over here, and after that just click on the multi-component. So now you can select vertices and edges, and with Shift I will select this edge over here, and we'll go under Edit Mesh and click on Wedge, and you will see that it creates this sort of arch for us. I think I had multiple faces selected before, so I'll just undo it really quickly. Try again, face, multi-component, Shift select the edge. We'll just take a look from different sides that we're not selecting anything else, and click on Wedge, and now it should work just fine. So you can change the number of divisions if you wanted to have a really smooth result. You can also change the angle, so you can create some really cool shapes with it, which is pretty awesome. So probably not extremely useful all the time, but again, good to have it in your toolkit, I guess. So we can get rid of this one for now, and now we can move on to extract, combine, and merge. Shift Edge to unhide, and we have the sphere over here. So with this one, what I want to do is I want to separate the sphere into two separate pieces, just to reinforce the knowledge. And then we will try and combine it back together, and we will merge the elements. So from my side view, I will select the faces on the right. We'll go back into my perspective mode. And so from here, we already know how to do this. We will go under Edit Mesh and Extract, and Shift P to unparent it, and then just go straight into your object mode. So you have those two separate meshes here. And I just want to move this one out a little bit, so maybe like so. And now I want to connect them back together, and I also want to merge those vertices in the middle, so that there is no hole between the two objects anymore. So what we can do is we can go back to our combine, otherwise it will not work. So the object needs to be combined. And if I go into my vertex mode and go back to my right view and select all of those vertices in the middle, and we can go under Edit Mesh and click on Merge. And you will see that nothing happens. That's because the vertices are too far away from each other. So what we can do is just to change this distance threshold a little bit. So you can see as soon as you go to something like 0.6, it connects them properly. And to confirm this, I can just click on any one of those, and I can start moving, just moving them around to see if it's properly connected or not. So this is quite a useful operation, and you will probably find yourself doing this a lot, because it's always easier to work on just one part of an object, especially if it's a symmetrical object. You don't really want to be applying the same types of operation to an object over and over again. So for instance, if we go back a little bit, yeah, so something like this, right? Let's say I didn't have this part of the object at all, so I only had my left side. If you look at it from the top view, and go into my polygons, and maybe I started extruding something like so. So Control E, extrude. And now maybe adding more extrusions everywhere. And let's say we wanted to mirror this across. So we could use a mirror operation, which you are already familiar with. We could also do something else, because the pivot point is sitting just over here, which is really cool. So we don't need to worry about it. But let's say, let's break it a little bit, just to show you how you can fix that. So we have been using snap to grid option before, but we have never used a snap to vertex option just yet, which can be really useful in a lot of situations. So if I go into my right view and just break this pivot point a little bit, so let's say it's sitting somewhere over here, and I need it to sit right where this edge is if I wanted to mirror it across properly. So what I can do is, if we press D again, I can snap it to those verts over here. So for this, all you need to do is to, first you need to confirm which axis you're working with. And that's really easy to do. All you have to do is to drag using one of the arrows. So I've dragged it left and right, meaning that I will be working with this particular axis, which I think at the moment is our X. Then press and hold V for Valerie. And now, if we start dragging this around, you will start seeing that it sort of snaps. So it's snapping to the vertices. And all we need to do is to snap it to those verts on the left. And it doesn't let me go any further because there are no more vertices anywhere. So I've snapped it here. And I could also snap it to this point as well. So to snap it here, I could either use my X snap, because I could snap to the grid, or I can use V snap again. So now I need to reconfirm which axis I'm using by kind of dragging this blue arrow around just to tell my, hey, I will be working with this one. Press V and hold, and then start doing this again. So now I can just kind of snap it to the middle point over here. And hopefully if we go into the perspective mode, you will see that now it's sitting right in the middle of the object, which is exactly what we want. So we can press on D again to confirm where the pivot point is sitting. Could also get rid of history and freeze transforms at this point. And if I go back to my right view, a very legit way of mirroring across. Instead of using the mirror operation, what we could do is we could press Ctrl D to duplicate the object, and we could scale it negatively. In this particular case, it will be in negative Z, because this is the direction we will be mirroring across. And now we just need to make sure that we freeze the transformations on this object, because we never want to be working with negative values for the scale. We can combine those two together. We can grab the middle vertices. So make sure that you drag a selection over, so that you're making sure that you're selecting both rows of vertices. And from here you can go and merge them together. So in this particular scenario, distance threshold of 0.01 should be fine. And just in case, to make sure that it's actually working, we can drag around a vertex sitting in the middle, just to make sure that we're not getting a hole. And that's completely fine. So that's perfectly normal. We have connected all of those elements together. We could smooth this one edge really quickly as well. So press spacebar and find mesh display from here and just go soften edge. Cool, so that's looking great. We can get rid of this piece, and there is another interesting command which is a little bit similar to booleans, and this is a new one. I've only just discovered it. I don't think you will be using it quite a lot, but again, it's good to know what it is. So we have those two objects, and this one is the one I created using this method, and I will be using this cube to try and replicate this result. So it works with two polygonal faces, so you will have to select a polygonal face at the top of your cube, for example, where you wanted the hole to be, and you will have to select another element, which should be another face of a different object, to be able to create this hole over here. So let's just try it out. Let's say we go and create something like, again, a cylinder. We're using them quite a lot today. Just scale it up a little bit. And what I want to do, I will get rid of all of the faces at the bottom. And I will also get rid of all of the edges, so that this is just one face. So shift right click, delete edge, and it breaks, which is fine. So we'll see if we can actually fix it. Nope. Cool. So instead of getting rid of the edges, I just got rid of the middle vertex. Now we have this one continuous face. I can also center my pivot point for this one. Now I can drag this object over. And let's say I will position it somewhere around here. Maybe around here. I can look from the top view as well. So maybe we'll just position it like so, and go back to our perspective mode. And so one thing you will notice is that as soon as we use this command, what Maya will try and do, it will try and connect this polygonal face, and it will sort of make it go up, because this is not sitting directly on our cube, it is slightly above it. Now put our wireframe back on. So we'll have to combine those two elements together as well. Just mesh combine. And from here, let's go and find our make hole tool. So you will see that it shows us those tiny little dots, they're kind of face centers. So we can click on this one, and we can shift click on this one over here and press enter, and you will see that Maya will create a hole for us. And it doesn't look super great because, as you can see from this view, it's not sitting exactly on the same plane. So in order to fix this, if we go into our fix menu and just select our vertices that we just created on this face, what we can do is we can move them around and we can snap them on our y-axis. So I will be using V snapping again. Snap, and middle mouse click on this vertex over here, and it should snap it back. So once again, if we move them out, we just need to drag select all of them, or potentially I think you might be able to select them like this. Confirm which axis you're working with. Navigate to the vert that you want to snap to. Press V, and middle mouse click on this one, and kind of middle mouse click and hold and drag around, and you will see that your vertices will get snapped to this point. So snapping is one of those things that you need to practice, and you will get used to it quite soon. So from here it's the same sort of scenario where ideally we would want to go ahead and connect all those elements back together just to make sure that we're getting a nice looking polygon out of this. And I wonder if multicut will work this time, because it might. Nope. Which is cool. So again, we could use our triangulate option if we wanted to. We will take a look at what else multicut can do now. So if we unhide this, it's just another cube. So multicut is quite cool. Apart from doing things like connecting elements together in this way, so if we wanted to maybe create an additional set of polygons without using the extrude option, you could always use multicut tool for this. I actually use it quite a lot. It's a pretty useful tool. So you can go around and connect elements together. It will create this additional geometry for you, and you can get rid of the things that you don't need after that. So just a nice little thing to have, and we can start, extruding or doing all sorts of cool things with it. Of course, the same result could have been achieved by using the extrude. So if we go on Control E here, and we'll just create an offset without actually dragging anything around, so it will create an additional set of polygons for us. And from here we can just select this polygon and extrude again, maybe change the offset again a little bit. Another thing we can do with multicut tool is we can kind of slash through the mesh overall. So for this, let's try it with an object mode and see if it works. So if we click here and press enter, you will see that it actually slashed through the entire mesh, which is really cool, especially for things like when you're working on a destroyed element. So what we could do, we could separate those two and potentially animate those two pieces, like they're falling apart or something like that. So this is really cool. Another thing we could do is to select only those three faces, or only those three, for example, and we could try and just cut through those, and you will see that it doesn't cut through anything else, so it only cuts through the selection, which can be handy as well. So this is the multicut tool. You will most likely end up using it quite a lot in your day-to-day modeling life. And another thing we can take a look at is the target weld. So I think I'm just going to use this model for this. So sometimes you need to get rid of elements, and again, there are so many ways in which you could do it, but let's say I just wanted to get rid of this extrusion altogether. There's a couple of ways of doing it. So I could just select all of those faces and press delete and then use a pen tool, but maybe for some reason I wanted to do something a little bit different. So let's say I just wanted to get rid of those faces over here. So we can use this target weld tool, which is sitting just under the polygon shelf, just over here. And I think we can also find it under mesh tools, just at the very bottom. This is our target weld, and it gives you two different options if we open it up. Also, if you wanted to open up options for any items on the shelf as well, you can just double click on it. It will give you the same option box. So we have two different modes. There is a target mode and a center mode. If we use the center mode, we can click on one vertex and then sort of click and drag it to the other one, and it will just connect them in the middle, so like this. And we can start getting an interesting result out of this. Or, if I undo a couple of times, we can use the other option, which is our target, meaning that you decide where it goes. So for instance, I could go like this, and it will just connect this element to this vert over here. So we can start introducing some quite cool shapes if we wanted to, or we could just go ahead and get rid of this extrusion altogether. And we can keep combining elements until there is nothing more left, except for this one edge, which is we can just click on it and go shift right click and delete edge. And there are no vertices or anything like that. So this weld tool is really cool, and especially when you start finding n-gons, when you start finding those floating verts around, this is where you can just use your weld tool, target weld tool, if nothing else helps to get rid of those vertices. So really useful. Go ahead and try it out. I recommend you try all of those tools out just to make sure that you understand how they work, and also because it takes time to get used to some of them, and because you will be using them quite a lot, it is very important to feel comfortable when you're using them. And don't forget, as usual, don't forget about your delete history and freeze transformations, and potentially rename an object if you wanted to as well. This is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.